Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining. I stepped in a little early to the conversation, and I am glad to see so many faces and people who have joined. I love seeing all the questions in the chat, so keep them coming. This is going to be an interactive session, so I have some poll questions for you. I will ask for your feedback, so we're going to go ahead and get started. Before I tell you a little bit more about me, I did want to learn more about you and want to ask which best describes you. So let's see. I'm going to try to get the polling. Let's see. Okay, I see people are putting in the chat. Okay, are you a high school student, parent or guardian, college student, educator, mentor, or other? And if you are other, feel free to throw that in the chat. Okay, I see college student. Okay, great. I'm seeing a good majority. So we have a good mix. We have students, we have some college students, some educators. So I love this topic because it's something that reaches so many different folks, and everyone has a role to play in helping students reach their goals. So a little bit about me. I do want to say thank you for attending this afternoon and participating in our poll. Again, I love seeing such a diverse group. I love seeing the interaction. My name is Jacquelyn Cottom, and I have made it my personal mission to help students and families understand the college and career funding process. So, throughout my career, I've had the privilege of working with organizations that are deeply committed to expanding access to higher education. Today, I serve as the Director of Online Education with NASFA, which is the National Association of Student Financial Aid Administrators. But that's not just my profession, it's something I do care deeply about. After college, I had planned to work for a year to save money before going to graduate school because it costs money, and I didn't want to be in a whole lot of debt. During that time, I had the opportunity to work for a foundation, so I planned hundreds and led planning and paying for college workshops across the country. And I'll never forget one student. I was speaking at a workshop in Arizona, and afterwards, the valedictorian came up to me and she told me that she didn't think college was possible for her. She had come to the United States with her mother when she was 3 years old. She worked incredibly hard. She excelled in school and she dreams of going to college, but because of her immigration status and the laws in her state at the time, she believed that her dream had reached a dead end. So we talked about our options. We talked about scholarships. But more importantly, we just talked about the possibility, and that conversation changed me. She got something out of it, but it really changed me. My Marvel loving sons would call it my origin story. And yes, they did see the Spider-Man movie this week without me. Work that. But I realized a couple of things. Talent is universal, but opportunity is always equal. But information can change lives. So sometimes the biggest barrier isn't your ability, but it's simply not knowing what options exist. So my goal today isn't just to explain financial aid, it's to help you make informed decisions that open doors to your future. So today we're going to talk about and simplify a process that oftentimes feels complicated. We're going to talk about how education can be funded, how financial aid really works, and how to understand an aid offer and making smart financial decisions. So whether you're planning for a four-year university, community college, apprenticeship, you're still exploring your options. So you don't have to leave here knowing everything. I do hope you feel leaving a little bit more confident. And so we're going to get started with that. So speaking in the future, I know one of the themes of this summit is looking at your future. So what financial decisions will your future you thank you for? So just imagine 4 years from now, you've completed your education or training, you've started your career, you're looking back at the decisions you make, and you're thinking, what financial decisions will your future you thank you for? So we're going to explore some of those today. I do want to start off by saying, like, sometimes when we hear college, we immediately think of a four-year university, but today's workforce offers many different pathways. So it's not about what someone else wants you to do. It's not, my goal isn't to convince you that everyone should choose the same path. It's just to help you understand how to pay for whichever path is right for you. Okay, so there's lots of different paths. The best path is the one that fits your goals, not someone else's. But no matter what path you do choose, you need a plan to pay for it. So here's another polling question I have for you all. Question is, what is your biggest question about paying for college? Is it A, understanding financial aid, B, completing the FAFSA, C, avoiding debt, D, finding scholarships, or E, comparing financial aid offers and college costs?
Maybe it's me, but I'm saying a different question.
Oh, let's see. I'm sorry. Let's
It's
see. The
it's
path you were most interested in after high school. Okay, yes. Path you're most interested in after high school. Okay. So you all are saying A for four-year college. Great. Really fine. That's an excellent answer and response as well. Okay. A. Okay, looks like the majority is A. Okay, this is the next poem. Sorry, I skipped a slide on my end. What is your biggest question about paying for college? So is it understanding financial aid, completing the FAFSA, avoiding debt, finding scholarships, or comparing financial aid offers? Okay, C and D. So I see multiple ones coming in, most likely all of the above, A and D. So understanding financial aid and finding scholarships, C and D, A and B, completing the FAFSA. Okay, great. Okay, so just based on a quick glance, I noticed many of you guys selected either understanding financial aid, avoiding debt, finding scholarships. So one of the biggest misconceptions I hear is that if a family thinks they won't qualify for aid, they shouldn't complete the FAFSA. By the end of today, I hope you'll see why that's not true. But understanding financial aid and comparing college costs are also really helpful because that is going to help you make those smart decisions for your future self. So, we're going to talk about all of this today, but I see scholarships are also top of mind. We'll touch on them just briefly, but I also, stick around because I know there's a session later today where you're going to go deeper into finding and applying for scholarships. So I'm not going to spend too much time on that because I want you all to also attend that session. So this is very helpful. Thank you. Okay, so how do people pay for college, or what is financial aid? You'll notice that in a few of my slides, I kind of have multiple terminologies, like how do people pay for college, but what is financial aid? Um, I speak to financial aid administrators day in and day out. And so I know sometimes we have terminology and acronyms and things that we use in our profession that not everyone else understands. So what I want to do is kind of break down some of those terms, some of the terminology, not that so you know all the terms and things like that, so you know how to ask questions. What are the right way to ask the questions to get the information you really want to get at. So an important piece of the puzzle is financial aid, and paying for education is kind of like building a puzzle. Most students use multiple sources to pay for education, and it's not just one thing, it's a combination of resources. So it's considered any money a student receives to help pay post-secondary or college expenses from a source other than their family. There's different types of financial aid. There's gift aid, which covers scholarships and grants, and that is the aid that you do not have to pay back. That's considered gift aid. The other type of aid you may hear referred to as self-help aid, because that's aid that you either earn by working, so that would be federal work study, or you borrow, and that would be loans. So what type of aid do you think is everyone's favorite? Gift aid, yes, gift aid. Because again, that's the aid that you don't have to pay back. Where does the money come from? So there's different sources of financial aid. You have the federal government, which is the largest source. Um, based primarily on need. You have to apply via the FAFSA every year, and eligibility criteria must be met. You also have state aid. When most parents tell me they won't complete the FAFSA, or students say they may not complete it because they're not receiving grants anyway, most of the times they're thinking about the federal grants. They're not considering the state or institutional grants. So even if you know that you may not qualify for a federal Pell Grant, um, your state and institution also has grants that they award and offer to students. So if you're not completing the FAFSA, you're not being seen for any of those state or institutional grants. So you still want to look at completing the FAFSA because that's how most states and institutions will determine your eligibility as well. You also, like I said, universities, institutions, colleges, they also give out aid. And for that, a lot of that will depend on your residency. And also, some colleges or institutions may have additional forms besides the FAFSA that you have to complete in order to qualify for that type of aid. Most colleges, they will have priority deadlines, so pay close attention to those deadlines and if a separate application is required. You also have employer benefits, so you want to check with your employers to see if they have scholarships available, educational benefits. Also, private scholarships, that's, something that is also available. So we're going to talk more about the private scholarships in a different session, but that's also a source of financial aid. And James, I see your question in the chat. I will address special circumstances for FAFSA. So that is something that we're going to chat about. Where do you think most students receive financial aid? So do you think most students receive it from the federal government, from colleges and institutions, from state government, or private entities? Okay, so I'm seeing a smattering. Some are saying A lot of D from private entities. A. Okay. I see it stopped. And you're not getting quizzed on this. So there is no, I'm not going to go back and see who got these questions correct or incorrect. It's just to find out what you're thinking. Um, okay, so it looks like we have a good variety of here. Um, Most students actually receive their aid from the federal government. I know that surprises most folks, but federal government is the biggest source of most financial aid. If you remember, when we covered financial aid, it's an umbrella term. So also loans, those are considered financial aid, which is offered by the federal government. So that's why you may be thinking that it may not be federal government, but federal government is the biggest source of most aid packages. Okay, so when we talk about what financial aid is, you also need to understand, what does college actually cost. So there's a term that we use, it's called cost of attendance, or the COA. The cost of attendance is the school's estimate of the educational cost a student is expected to incur while enrolled during the award year. So you have direct cost and indirect cost. Direct costs are things like tuition and fees, housing and food, or living expenses if you live on campus. Indirect costs could be things like your transportation, your books, course materials, supplies, even your recreation. Those are things that are included in the larger cost of attendance. So what's one thing besides tuition, because I know tuition is usually that's the first thing people think about, but what's one thing besides tuition that, or an expense that people often forget? So those college students who are on, you may be best to answer these questions. What's one expense people often forget when they're thinking about the cost? Yeah, housing, transportation, those are good ones. Books, because in all the ones that you guys are listing, for books, food is a big one, dining, transportation, sometimes those aren't considered your direct cost. So for food, if you live off campus, you may not think about it because it's not in your tuition, but those are all costs that associate with your college. So your tuition may be one thing, but cost of attendance is the full overall estimate that the school is going to give you. Activities with friends, that's a good one too. They include a little bit of that in your miscellaneous personal expenses. So all of those things that you all put, the school or the college groups those into different categories to try to come up with that estimated cost of attendance. And for the cost of attendance, it's based on a reasonable, they use the term reasonable a lot, a reasonable cost and standard of living. So not the highest, but not dirt poor or like you're eating ramen every day, but they try to get an estimate or a average. So the student aid index, this is not necessarily what the family owes the college, but it is used in determining a student's aid eligibility. So the SAI or student aid index is calculated from data input on the FAFSA. This is going to stay the same no matter where you go. Your student aid index, once you fill out the FAFSA, that is going to stay the same. Your cost of attendance is going to change because depending on what institution you attend, that will determine your cost of attendance. And I'm not going to go into the formula. I could get really geeky and nerdy and talk about all the formula and what all the numbers mean in the FAFSA, but they look at the student contribution, your parent contribution if you're a dependent student, and based on different your financial and demographic information, they come up with a number, that student aid index. So emoji poll, thumbs up or thumbs down. Does your SAI tell you what you have to pay? So my SAI tells me what I have to pay. Thumbs up for yes, thumbs down for no. Okay. I see some up, some no's. Okay.
I'm glad they could find their down emoji. I was looking for where that is. I'm still looking. Carry on.
Yes, I gave a few extra seconds because I was like, we haven't used that one before. So the student aid index is not your college bill. It's an index or a number that colleges use, along with that cost of attendance and other information to determine your eligibility for financial aid. So two colleges could receive the exact same FAFSA, exact same student, with the exact same SAI and still offer very different financial aid packages, which means that what you actually will pay will be different. So the thumbs down was the correct answer for this one. And I'm going to tell you why towards the next few slides when we talk about comparing those aid offers and what those numbers actually look like in reality. So I did have a few folks who did say that they were interested in hearing about the FAFSA. Before we go there, I do want to mention that financial need is something that is going to come up. They're going to ask, and you're going to look at that. You're going to need this calculation for later. I'm not going to make you do math, but just know that your cost of attendance, that's how much it costs to attend that specific college. That's going to change no matter what college you go to minus your student aid index. That's the number you receive when you complete the FAFSA. That's going to equal your financial need. And your financial need determines how much and what type of aid you will receive. Because financial need will vary based on the college, again, because your cost of attendance is a factor. If your cost of attendance is higher, the financial need will be higher because your SAI stays the same. So how does the college get all of this information? And that's when you complete the FAFSA. So you have to complete the FAFSA in order for the college to get this information. For the 27-28 academic year, so anyone who's senior right now, you will be completing the FAFSA this year. It will be available by October 1st of 2026. I will tell you now that they've already started beta testing. So some students are already completing the FAFSA. There are the first phase, their Department of Education, they're working with partner organizations and community groups, and they're coming together and having students fill out the FAFSA. Late August, they are going to open it up for anyone to participate in the second phase of testing. There will not be a big splash about this. This is not something that they're going to share publicly because it's a beta test. So they're just testing to make sure things are going well. But schools are getting this information. And schools have a choice of whether or not they want to start looking at this information now. So that's just an inside tip. But by October 1, it'll be available for everyone. Colleges may set priority dates. Federal aid is considered an entitlement, so your Pell Grant. No matter when you fill out the FAFSA, if you're eligible for it, you will receive certain types of aid. However, the institutional and state aid that I mentioned and talked about, that colleges can set their priority deadline and say, we are not going to look at any students who submit after this date. So pay attention to those deadlines. And it is going to be different for every college. Every state may be different because the way they do the application and process and decide to offer students could be different. So pay attention to those priority deadlines. Not going to go into a big detail about the FAFSA because that would be another hour, but just some of the high points. It collects your demographic and financial information. Again, that information is used to calculate the student aid index. You have to complete it every year. Students and parents need your FSA ID. Students and parents need to complete it. They need to have their own FSA ID. And you're going to list all the colleges you're considering because, again, the college doesn't know that you exist unless you complete the FAFSA. I shouldn't say that. The college may know you exist because you've submitted an application or you've received information from them, but the financial aid office does not know you exist until you complete the FAFSA. So you have to complete the FAFSA for the financial aid office to know that you are out there and you want aid. And again, it's a federal application, but that's the gateway for all types of aid and even some scholarships. So make sure you complete that.
Miss
Um,
Jacqueline,
yes,
I just want to reiterate to all of the high school seniors. This is why earlier Dr. Christie said make a list of the schools that you're interested in based on the programs you're interested in, because you cannot submit FAFSA to schools that you haven't identified. And as you
correct.
heard Miss Jacqueline say, you'll need to have those schools available as you're completing out the FAFSA so that you can send this information to them. Thank you.
Yes, and they've increased the number of colleges that you can list on the FAFSA. Before it was a small number and then you'd have to do extra work to try to get more. You can put a lot of different colleges on there, but they will not know you exist if you don't fill out the FAFSA. So you have to do that. And the earlier, the better. Okay, this is what I was talking about, special circumstances, when life happens. Your FAFSA tells your story at one point in time. If your story changes, you have got to let the financial aid office know. The sooner, the better. So when you complete the FAFSA, and again, I didn't go into all the details about the actual application, but you're submitting data from 2 years ago. So any seniors now, they're submitting 27, 28 FAFSA. They're looking at your biographic and your financial information from 2 years ago. So things can happen between that. The FAFSA doesn't tell the whole story of everyone. A parent could lose a job. You may have a medical expenses increase. You may have a family that's experiencing a separation. You might have added someone to your family. Your financial aid office doesn't know unless you tell them. So there is something called professional judgment. That's a key term, professional judgment. When life happens, the financial aid office has the ability to review and use their professional judgment to adjust the information used to determine your financial aid eligibility. So they cannot say, if you did not get a federal Pell Grant, Okay, now you get a federal Pell Grant, but we have the ability to adjust the data. So if a parent lost a job or their income was reduced because of medical expenses, you can go in there and change some of those aspects of the application. Um, you want to make sure they're going to ask for documentation. It's on a case by case basis. So they can't just wipe a clean slate for everyone. They're going to ask you for more documentation. Um, but don't be afraid to ask. Ask the question. The worst they can say is, you're not approved. But they have to look at it first. The law recently changed with FAFSA simplification, and a institution cannot deny any student the opportunity to submit a professional judgment request. Every student has the ability. In the law, they said schools have to advertise it to students. They have to make it clear and available to students that you have the opportunity to ask for this information. So if anything has changed in your situation, you can ask the question. And it can be as simple as, our family's financial circumstances have changed since we filed the FAFSA. Can you tell me more about your professional judgment process? Simple as that. And they have to. Okay. So unique conditions do exist that can't be documented on the FAFSA. So that's why they have that ability to do that. So you have to contact the financial aid office to let them know when you do that, if you need that availability. I also want to say here that when you fill out the FAFSA, that is not the last step. You have to check your email or your student portal or however the school contacts you. You may have to submit more documentation. It's called verification. It's a process. They may ask you for documentation. You submit it to the financial aid office. They Many schools will not look at your application until you've completed that. Or they may say, okay, well, we would have given this student, they met the deadlines for their state and institutional aid, but we haven't gotten this documentation first. So we're going to give it to another student who's completed their documentation. So filling out the FAFSA is not the last step. You do have to communicate with the financial aid office or this institution, no matter whatever way they communicate with you. Make sure you understand that so that you know what the next steps are. Um, Let's see, I wanted to make sure I didn't miss anything in the chat. FAFSA is available for students to fill out October 1st, yes, of your senior year. And for those students who are not seniors right now, if you're a junior, sophomore, even a freshman, you can use the Federal Student Aid Estimator to get an early estimate of what your SAI is if you are interested in it. It does still require your demographic and income and asset information, but it is a resource for students or families if you're just thinking about, like, what's the next step. So, quick question, little brain break. Which superpower would you want if you could? And I was talking about a superhero movie earlier. Flight, invisibility, strength, telekinesis, or speed? Okay, so we're saying flight, strength, a lot of telekinesis. I think mine would also be telekinesis. I don't know. It depends on the day. It depends on the day. I see flights
Is
going
that
miles.
mind reading?
Yeah, that is being able to move things with your mind.
Oh, okay.
So, like, yeah, if I want to just like shut that door over there, I could shut it just by looking at it. Okay. Thank you for the participation. Okay, we're going to go on to the next slide. And this is where I wanted to spend a good chunk of time. And this is about making smart financial decisions. And then at the end, if we have those questions, I will address questions as time allows. So, um, receiving the financial aid offer. So, you've gotten the offer. It's not the finish line. It's just the beginning of making one of the biggest financial decisions you'll ever make. Okay. So we just want to make sure that we have the information so we can make the decision that's best for you. The decision that is best for you is not going to be the decision that's best for your neighbor, your cousin, your friend, your teammate, things like that. So financial aid offers. One, it's an offer. It's something that they are offering to you. I have the slide up here, but there's 4 questions that you really want to look at. What does it cost? So that would be the cost of attendance. This is just guidance that the Department of Education has told institutions. They shouldn't be calling it an award letter. These are some of the things that they should be offering to students to offer transparency, so you all have the best information. And again, when I talked about that terminology, it's making sure that students and families can see the offer and understand what's actually being offered. So, what does it cost? That could be always include the cost of attendance. What is free? So, that free aid, that's that grants and scholarships. So, list grants and scholarships separately from loans and federal work study. List them separately so you don't see a big clump and think, okay, this is all the information, this is all the aid I was offered, and that also includes loans. What has to be repaid and what is net, what's left. What's left, you'll often hear called the net cost. What is the net cost when you look at all of those things? And what are the critical next steps? Some institutions, they require you to submit something saying for work study that you actually want to accept your work study offer. Some say, okay, if you want a work study offer, you got to go to this website and find the job. Like, so you really have to see what the critical next steps are. Okay, so I have a couple of examples and we're going to go through examples. Need participation here. But I'm going to tell you about a couple students and they're going to be going to different institutions. One of the questions was, do private colleges also use the FAFSA? Is it another type of document? The private colleges absolutely use the FAFSA. They have to. That's the gateway for all financial aid. So all federal aid has to come through the FAFSA. But that's a great question because a lot of private colleges, and you'll see in some of my examples, may also use something called institutional methodology. So it is in a different form, a different analysis that they use to determine additional aid. So we have Jacob. He is a first generation college student from Richmond. He has a 3.9 GPA and wants to major in elementary education. His mom works full time and supports Jacob and his 2 younger siblings. Jacob is determined to graduate with minimal debt and has been working part time for the past 2 years to save for college. So he got an offer from Old Commonwealth University. I'm in Virginia, so that's not a real institution, but some of the names may sound familiar. But Old Commonwealth University is a public state flagship in Virginia. He's an in-state on-campus student. So his cost of attendance is $32,800. His SAI is negative $1,500, which equates to zero. That's a weird financial aid thing, but negative $1,500 is the highest need you could receive when you get the FAFSA, but when you're doing your calculations, it looks like zero. And so what is his OFA? And I see lots of responses in the chat right there. Okay, we also have a couple other schools that he receives offers from. He has an offer from Blue Ridge Heritage College, which is a private nonprofit four-year institution, and that COA is $63,400. And Seven Cities Community College. It has a less cost of attendance with 10,000 because it is a community college. So we're going to look to see what his OFA is. So OFA is all your financial aid and also your remaining need. So we're going to look at this offer together. You can see that he has a state grant. So Virginia gave him state grant. He has the Pell Grant, and he qualifies for the maximum Pell Grant. FSCOG is another federal grant. It's the Federal Supplemental Education Opportunity Grant. The long name, so you'll just see FSCOG. He was offered work study. Again, this is all an offer. This is something that he's being offered. He doesn't have to take it, but he's being offered this. He was also offered the loans. You will see on your aid offers that you are offered loans. It does not mean that you have to take them. They're offering you what you're eligible for. So for Blue Ridge Heritage College, you see that he has different types of offers. He received a $25,000 scholarship. It's an institutional scholarship, but that's more than what he received at Old Commonwealth, right? He received federal Pell Grant. That's going to stay the same no matter what institution he goes to. The FSEOG grant, that can change depending on your institution. He got less in federal work study. So this school is not offering him as much in federal work study. He's also receiving the same amount of the subsidized and unsubsidized direct loan. You'll see that's the same because that's what he qualifies for, and that's a federal grant, so that's going to stay the same. So some could say, like, he's really winning. He got a $25,000 scholarship. But then we look at Seven Cities Community College. Does he have any scholarships here? He has a state grant. No, no scholarship. State grant, Pell Grant, FSCOG, and he has a small institutional grant. So, $605, smaller. But the total amount that he received is $10,000. So when we look at the remaining need, so your cost of attendance minus SAI, minus your offer or your other financial aid assistance is that remaining need. So you can see here for Jacob, I have a zero there because that SAI negative 1,500, that's the maximum, but when you're doing the calculation, it's actually zero. But he got 23,395 of financial aid package at Old Commonwealth, 43,000 at Blue Ridge, and 10,000. So when you're looking at his package, the actual amount that he has to pay for the community college would be zero. Is that correct? Is there anything that jumps out at you first, or anything you are questioning when you see this? Yep, that's correct. One thing I do want to point out here, I'm going to go back to this slide. Here at the community college, he wasn't offered any loans. So he didn't need any loans to cover his cost of attendance here. He got 10,000 in grants, so he has no loans. At Blue Ridge and at Old Commonwealth, he had loans, and those loans were incorporated into his other financial assistance. So when you go and you look here, you want to look to see if you know that you don't want any loans or that you're not planning on taking loans, that you absolutely don't because you have outside scholarships that are coming in. You want to make sure that you're paying attention to that because where his remaining need here, that net cost for Seven Cities is zero. At Blue Ridge and OCU, it says 9,000 or 19,000, but that included the loans. It would be higher if you took the loans out, but it's not going to look like that when you see it. So those are the things that I want you to really pay attention to when you're comparing your aid offers, because depending on what it looks like and how it looks, it may look better than what it actually, I don't want to say what it actually is, but you want to be careful because financial aid encompasses scholarships, grants, free gift aid, but also loans and work study, which is earned and borrowed money. So you want to pay attention to those things when you're looking at the aid offer. So I'll go over one more. We have Janine. Her SAI is 18,500. So she's from Virginia Beach. Her family has a little higher income. Both of her parents work full time, but they're also paying for a sibling already in college. She has a weighted 4.2 GPA and strong SAT scores. She's interested in political science or economics. And so again, she got offers from OCU, Bridgewater, Blue Ridge, Heritage, and Seven Cities. So we're going to go through this one a little more quickly. So I want to highlight that here she got a merit grant. So merit grant is not based on need. For folks who are like, I'm not completing the FAFSA because I know I'm not going to receive grants. Like I said before, you are thinking about federal grants. Institutions also have state and state and institutional grants. There's also merit scholarships that are not based on need. So she received a merit scholarship, a merit grant. She received an academic scholarship, and this institution actually broke it down and said her total gift aid was 5,500, and then she has the loans. So she has a total gift aid of 5,500, but then loans that are a little higher and work steady. So she received 30,000 in grants and scholarships here, her total gift aid, but she does have that earned money that she could use if she wants to. She's eligible for it. Um, but also the loans. And at the Seven Cities Community College, 5,500. So she just is receiving an unsubsidized loan. Her SAI is higher, so she is over what her SAI is over the cost of attendance. So she will not receive any need-based aid. So she's not going to receive a subsidized loan where the government's paying the interest while you're in college. She's not going to receive any federal grants here. She's only going to receive the unsubsidized loan. So she's responsible for that interest as soon as it hits her account. So we're taking a look. We're going to look at the different offers here. So OCU and BRHC are pretty close in the remaining need, not too far, not bad. But again, this 4,500, that's what her remaining need at Seven Cities would be, community college. But that's if she takes out the loans. If she doesn't take out the loans, she needs to come up with 10,000. That's going to be her actual cost. Okay. So you can see that sometimes when you're looking at the actual cost, a community college, their cost of attendance is way down. It's looking really good. But it may not always be what you pay, so we're looking at what that need is. We have Gregory. I won't go through his full example. He is in Fairfax County. His parents both work. The parents also support their grandmother, so the grandmother lives in the household. And his family can contribute a little something towards college, but not the full cost. So his SAI is about 6,200. He's going to qualify for state grants. He also received a little bit of the Pell Grant, not as much, but a little bit. Pell Grant going to stay the same no matter where you go, but the other types of aid is going to change. What I want to note here is when you're looking at comparing financial aid offers, I'm going to ask you all, and you all are going to not do this. Do not go to the financial aid office and say, well, my neighbor, friend, church member, cousin, uncle, etc., got X, Y, and Z. Why didn't I get it? You're not comparing students because, like I said, every student is different. Every situation is different. When students come to the financial aid office and say that, financial aid administrators, one, we're not going to talk about what another student received, and we're not going to compare them. We are looking at your financial aid offer. So a better way to come to the financial aid office is to look at the actual offers between the institutions. You're comparing the net cost, okay? You are looking to see what you were offered at different institutions, and you're going to ask questions. You're going to ask questions. You're going to say, okay, I saw that I received 2,000 of employment. Is that the maximum I can receive? Or if I decline my loan, could I work and get a higher reward? Your financial aid cannot exceed your cost of attendance, so they are going to have to do math, and they have to set different costs. But if you're saying, nope, I'm going to decline, if Jacob says, I don't want the loans at BHRC, and I want, instead of 5,500 in loans, could I get more of that in employment? They may be able to offer that. But you're looking at your offer, your situation. Jacob, if you remember, he worked part-time. So he may say, like, I don't need the employment at the school. I have a really good job. They're going to let me continue working. So can you take that off my package so I can maybe qualify for something else? So that's how you approach the aid offers. Those are the questions you want to ask. Um, I'm not going to go through all of them because I know I'm at time, but just when you think about ways to lower your cost, you can live at home. I know Virginia schools, most states have community college transfer agreements or articulation agreements. So you can start off at a community college, then transfer into a 4 year. You can do dual enrollment, earn college credit in high school. Your employers or your parents' employers could have tuition assistance, apprenticeships, graduate on time. I didn't even cover all of the stuff that's happening with that, but it will be very important to graduate on time because they're stopping the amount of aid that you can receive. Borrow only what you need. If you have to borrow, borrow only what you need. They're going to offer you everything you're eligible for. If you only need a small, tiny bit, look for scholarships first. I'm always going to say that. You're going to look for scholarships, but if you absolutely need to borrow, borrow what you need. But most importantly, apply for those scholarships, okay? You're going to have another presentation on that. So I'm not going to cover that. But if you have any questions, I know there's another session, so I don't want to take time away. So Dr. Christie, let me know, or if you all have any questions, I am here
Thank you.
and
Thank
available.
you. Any burning questions? You'd have to come off of mute to ask it real quick for Miss Jacquelyn. A lot of phenomenal information. I know I had a bunch of uh, takeaways from this just listening. And every time things are constantly changing with the whole college scene. The one question I had, Miss Jacquelyn, do these same FAFSA uh, insights apply for community college and trade schools?
Yes, absolutely. Community colleges, many students in community colleges also receive federal aid. They have financial aid offices that do their packages. So many of the same aspects apply, all of them still apply. You're still able to do scholarships. They're still going to really break down your aid offer. So that definitely still applies. And one thing I didn't mention was graduate students. I know we do have some current college students and graduate students on the um, a lot of things for graduate programs and graduate students are changing. Um, I can't talk about all of them right now with this time, but if you have any questions, please let me know. Uh, There were new laws that were passed, and it's going to impact mostly graduate students. If you receive the Graduate Plus loan, that's going away. You have an expected time to credential that is for everybody. If you don't graduate in the amount of time that is set by your program of study, doesn't matter if you're doing it part-time, whatever your published program of study, if you do not receive your credential by then, any federal loans that you're receiving are going to be, you're not eligible for the same amount. So that's something that's changing. Um, for trade schools, one of the good things is there is a new program. It is Pell Grant eligibility for workforce development programs. So sometimes some of those shorter certificate programs that were not eligible for aid, federal aid, they are now going to be eligible for aid. So be on the lookout for that if you're looking at short-term certificate programs.
Excellent. Thank you. And I do see a number of hands that are up right now. And I know that we are short on time. So, David, ask your quick question, and then River. And we'll just have to be very concise, but ask your questions, and then we'll have to move on after those two.
Okay, my questions are, will there still be those virtual FAFSA sessions in the academic year? And then also another question is, could you discuss SAP or SAP appeal?
Yes, that's a great question. So, yes, for the virtual sessions for in the upcoming year. Also, many colleges, especially community colleges, they do a lot of financial aid workshops to get and encourage students to complete the FAFSA. SAP, that's a great term. It's Satisfactory Academic Progress Standards for those who might not have heard that before. When you're receiving aid, um, they're saying we expect you to meet certain progress standards. If you have a semester and you don't meet them or you fall below those SAP standards, you have the option to do an appeal. So life happens. You need to communicate with the financial aid office and say, how do I submit a SAP appeal? Again, they're going to ask for lots of documentation, and they can either put you on probation, which says, okay, you have to meet certain standards by the semester. If you're not put on probation because just based on the classes or the time you may not meet those standards, they can say, we'll put you on an academic plan, meaning you're committing to meet certain standards each semester until you are meeting the satisfactory academic progress standards. Great question. And I can, if you want to reach out to me, you can definitely, and I can tell you more about submitting your appeal and what your college looks at and things like that. But your college does have to have a clear pathway for students to submit a SAP appeal, which is completely different than the professional judgment or special circumstances.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. And then the last question will come from River.
Hello, I was just curious. Once I have my FAFSA and financial aid stuff submitted, should I be going over that with my financial aid office? Would you say every semester or every year?
I would say definitely every year, at least once a year, unless you have a change, a significant change. Or the other time that you would want to go back, if you have a scholarship that's coming in mid-year or additional funds, that's when you also want to notify your financial aid office. And I say that because once they find out later, they are going to have to make adjustments to your aid offer because there's certain things that can't go over. So you do not want them to take away that gift aid, some of that free money that you've received because you might have had a scholarship come in later in the year and they didn't account for that while they put your package together. The earlier you can let them know, they can do other adjustments. So if you're doing work study, maybe you don't work through the work study program as many hours. So then because you have other money coming in, or if you took loans, that's something that they can, you can take away immediately because you have other funds coming in. So that's the only time I would say go ahead and approach them again, but definitely once a year, at least once a year. And I will say, and I can end on this, is that when students start looking at colleges, they visit a lot of offices. They go to their academic programs to find out about their academics. They go to the dorms to see where they're going to be sleeping. They go to the cafeteria because where are you going to eat? They go to the stadiums and all the things. But I've done these presentations for decades, and I've only had a handful of folks say that they've actually initiated and went to the financial aid office. So, River, the fact that you're asking that is huge because most students do not even consider coming to see the financial aid office. But that's where the money is. And there's funds that sometimes get recycled. And if I know that there's a student who is eligible for it and qualifies for it, and I recognize the name, it's kind of like, okay, well, something became available. So, I want to make sure that the student receives it. So, yeah, don't be afraid of the financial aid office. Come and see us. That's where the money is.
Thank you so very much. Y'all, let's give a round of applause and show some reactions to Miss Jacquelyn for a phenomenal financial aid discussion. Very timely, much needed. Miss Jacquelyn, as you are departing, please stick around if you can. There may be some questions in the chat if you could answer those as we're moving on. But one of the questions was, how can our students contact you for further questions? So I don't know if you are comfortable sharing your email address, but I'm sure they would love that if they have any other burning questions, but do whatever you're comfortable with.
Yes, I can. I will drop my email address in the chat right now. And then I'll also answer any questions that were sent in the chat over the next few minutes. And thank you
Excellent.
for the
All right.
opportunity.
Thank you so very much.